and welcome to another edition of the Hitting the Hardwood podcast, your home for all the latest Minnesota Lynx and WNBA news, analysis, and coverage. Thank you for tuning into another episode. I'm your host, Mitchell Hansen, and we're back. We have the WNBA back with the start of the regular season here in the middle of May. As you're listening to this podcast, the opening weekend had just wrapped up with the Minnesota Lynx starting off the season 2-0. And honestly looking pretty good considering they're not at full strength with Kayla McBride yet to come back as of this recording of the podcast. And then Minnesota dealing without Alana Smith at the start of the year, but she obviously returned shortly thereafter and took the court in the second game of the year. But Minnesota looks great. There are some teams, look at Minnesota, New York, that impressed early on. It's just good to have the games back. It's good to have the WNBA back. And it's good to have the regular season, the games that count, as they say, back here in what will be a fun, groundbreaking season. Now with the total of 13 teams with the addition of Golden State. But it'll be a fun season. I'm looking forward to covering it once again. This is my 10th season, which is hard to believe. It's crazy that time has flown by that fast, but year 10 for me. You can find all my work at Winsidr, Canis Hoopus, RotoWire, and of course this Hitting the Hardwood podcast and the Hitting the Hardwood network. So this week I dive into what we've seen from the Lynx so far, what we've seen throughout the W so far, kind of look ahead to what the Lynx could be here moving forward and throughout the regular season. The regular season now that includes 44 games. But we kind of it's a small sample size, but we kind of look at what took place or what has taken place so far, and what this Lynx team is capable of. And I do so with the guest this week, who is somebody who's been on this podcast a few times, somebody I work alongside at Winsidr. I should say work for and alongside, but none other than Aryeh Schwartz. Aryeh, 5 years ago now, which we touch on in the podcast, but 5 years ago, I joined the team at Winsidr to cover mainly it was just the WNBA. But now that's transitioned to WNBA and the Lynx, and as well as a senior writer role. So I appreciate Aryeh for not only bringing me on, but for joining this podcast and always being willing to join me on the podcast last second, which was the case again with this one. But we talk about the Lynx, and he's fun to chat Lynx with, especially with his ties to Minnesota and being from Minnesota. So without further ado, let's jump right into the podcast with Aryeh Schwartz.
Aryeh, how you doing?
I'm doing good, The WNBA season's here. I guess we're not doing Mondays off this year. I don't know. I never look fully into the schedule, but it's real games. It's always fun and interesting with the preseason games, how different people react to them, how different teams. For me, I always find preseason games super humorous because for fandoms, and maybe sometimes for media people too, so often it just becomes kind of like confirming what your opinion already was.
Right.
I think maybe I was texting you this during one of the preseason games. It's like if this player struggles and you don't like that player, it's like, oh, that's a sign this player isn't good. If this player struggles but you like that player or you like that team, it's like, oh, but it's preseason. They're not really
Yeah.
trying. They're going half speed. Or if your team does really good, like the Chicago Sky, a team that looked really good in the preseason, if we're being
Yeah.
honest, and I don't think has looked as good in the regular season, people will be like, in the preseason, get all hyped and excited. They're going to be so much better than we thought. And then kind of you come back down to reality.
Right. Yeah, it's now it's the like you I mean you now you can start judging people. You can start actually it counts. It matters, which is great. I mean it feels like we really didn't have an this off season, but
Hmm.
also I mean that's great. I mean that for basketball fans like us, I know that that's something that I don't mind, but it doesn't feel like another any other year where we're waiting for the season to start. We just kind of jumped right back into it, and we had a continuous kind of off season, which was awesome. But it's good to be back. It's good to have the season back, and it's good to be working with you again at Winsidr and the rest of the crew, and that kind of leads me into to opening things up to you as far as there's been some expansion, I guess you could say, to Winsidr with the team that we've put together, and I shouldn't say we put together, you've put
You're
together,
part
but
of it.
the team that's at Winsidr and a lot of the I know I'm extremely excited and I'm stoked with what we've already done and kind of the content that we've pushed out, not only written content but social content, video content, whatever it may be. But just if you want to just explain a little bit of what took place and what's happening at Winsidr right now.
Yeah, look, I think if you follow the WNBA, and I hope this doesn't come off big-headed, if you follow the WNBA, you've heard of Winsidr, and you know what we do. And I think for years, our mission has always been to elevate what content we're bringing that season, try and do something better than we did the year before. And a big weakness that we noticed over our past few years is, hey, our graphics are great, our written content's great, we have really cool stuff coming out. We're not doing enough to promote that stuff. We're not getting creative and finding ways to engage WNBA fans so that they can access our content in different ways. People, not everyone wants to read. Some people want to watch TikTok. Some people want to see clips on Instagram or on social media, or on YouTube. And so try what our main goal going into the off season was to bring on as many people that could benefit us in that way and build us out in that way. So I'm really excited. If you aren't already, if you're on TikTok or any of the social medias, TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, Facebook, like all of them, we're flooding the content airwaves. I'm very excited for it because I think we do some really, really cool stuff at Winsidr, and we've added some really amazing people that not only have more video, audio, whatever it is, aspects in their repertoire, but also are writers. I mean, that's going to be our core thing, no matter how long we go until the written word is dead, as they say.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I'm really excited. We got really cool stuff going on all over, and obviously, I have to plug our Patreon, where we're doing something really cool, I think personally. There's always that struggle of what do you put behind a paywall, as I'm sure you know, as I'm
Mhm.
sure our listeners know. WNBA, people who cover the W are doing it because they're passionate about the W. They don't want to put things behind a paywall, but they also need to finance the hard work that they're doing and the hours they're putting into it. So it's always that give and take of not wanting to put things behind the paywall, but needing to for survival. So something we've put behind the paywall is behind the article. Yeah, I didn't even realize that when I did that lead up. But it's a really cool content because so often, as you know, Mitchell, as others can assume or know from doing their own work, not always, you write an article, things get cut out. You go into writing an article, you have an idea. Like there's so much that doesn't end up in the final article, and there's so much more on the topic that the writer can speak to. So we've been publishing these audio interviews where someone from our staff interviews someone from our staff who just released an article discussing it, and diving into it. And there's some other cool creative stuff, but people want to listen to us talk about the Lynx. They don't want to hear
Mhm.
about Winsidr, but definitely check
Yeah.
out Winsidr if you got a
Yeah.
chance.
Well, and that's part of it too. Like I know people that are listening to this podcast, they enjoy the written content. They enjoy audio too. I mean, they're obviously listening to this podcast, they listen to your podcast. They follow, all of us on social media, but they also do like that traditional written content. And that's something that, yes, Winsidr's adding a lot of the other elements, but that's what you have to do in today's world or today's age of, the digital age.
Gotta be
Um,
hip and young.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Which I don't have, but um, that's why I write. But I mean, it's one of those things where you're still covering the game, you're still writing about the game, and that's something that I'm stoked about continuing. And I was just thinking about it as you were talking. I can't. I'm in year 5 already at Winsidr. It feels like I just started like 2 years ago, but
It's it's like it really blends in. Rachel and I were chatting about it too the other day. We were like, how long has this it's gotten to the point where and I feel like sometimes people get offended, but like I forget how long people have been because like for me it's like once you join in,
right.
cool, you're there. And then
Yeah.
like the years just start blowing together. I should mention, I need to plug this, and I
Hmm.
totally forgot to. Every Tuesday, 3 p.m. on the Bleacher
Yes.
Report app, Rachel and I are hosting. As far as I know, it is the first live video WNBA year-round show. Uh, that yeah, like it's as far as I know, as far as I've been following the we've always been clamoring and screaming, hey, we want a WNBA show,
Hmm.
WNBA centric year-round weekly show, video content, and Rachel and I got blessed by Bleacher Report, so we're doing that every Tuesday. um Look, I'll be blunt. I've thrown some shade at major sports outlets, Bleacher Report included, for their mistakes when it comes to women's sports and the WNBA in general. And I know people maybe will say, "Oh, he's bought out." I've been really impressed by the investment. I mean, you see this background behind me.
Hmm.
A lot of the merch was from Bleacher Report. A lot of the gear, they gave us this setup. They've really invested in us and other people to create content around the women's game. So I'm really excited about that and gave us a really cool opportunity. So I hope you join. We've been bringing up the Lynx a lot because they are a top team and an interesting one, and I'm
Yeah.
sure we will dive into that more.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we get into that, I just kind of want to talk about opening weekend. Obviously, we just had opening weekend. We're kind of here in the first week of the WNBA season. We're still early on. We're still trying to kind of get a feel for everybody. But what were your thoughts of what we saw in opening weekend, or maybe what some disappointments from opening weekend?
Yeah, honestly, here's the thing. In a Lynx centric way, because this is the Lynx podcast, I'll
Hmm.
say that impressed. Um, they picked up where they took off or where they left off. They picked up where they took off. Um, so that's really interesting. I'm sure we'll dive into that more. Maybe a little bit disappointing would have to be Seattle. But I can go into a whole rant on that, and I probably will on Tuesday on either the Winsidr Show or the Bleacher Report app. I have a lot of concerns with Seattle. Obviously, it's one game. I'm not saying anyone should be freaking out, sounding the alarms or anything like that. But just what I saw from Seattle is extremely, extremely concerning. Phoenix, you get your hopes up, but I feel like they're building you up to let you down.
Hmm.
And then everybody else, I mean, for the most part, is pretty in line, I feel like, with kind of what we expected. You know, there's been the hype around certain teams. Indiana looked nice at times. New York arguably is going to be a better team than they were last year. We can get into a whole
Hmm.
discussion on why they need to be a better team because they're 5 seconds and a bad call away from losing. Um, but yeah, so like I overall, look, the it's fun to watch real basketball, and it wasn't like it was another preseason game. For
Right.
many years before prioritization, I felt like the first few games of the season were preseason games, not just because they were the first games we were allowed to watch.
Hmm.
Shout out to that one Lynx fan who did it on her phone that one year.
Yeah.
But now we can watch preseason games, so it makes the start of the season feel a little bit more official and real. Where in past years, I think I was a little bit more hesitant to speak my mind.
Hmm. The I'll just one thing that kind of I saw from well, let's look at Dallas, who the Lynx played in their season opener. Obviously, Dallas is a somewhat of a new look team. You got Paige Beckers, obviously that's ready. I mean, she's been WNBA ready for a while, but she's still trying to learn her way in the WNBA. But that Dallas is going to be a team, and not to just single them out, but Dallas is going to be a team that I think is going to start slow. They're going to have some road bumps early on just because they are younger, kind of a newer look team. But I think they're going to come on strong towards the middle toward and end of the regular season. A team that kind of surprised me too also was Washington. I mean, not that they're bad, but it just they're sitting here 2-0 at the start of the year. I mean, that's now that can change quickly. It's just 2 games in, but um, for me, it was kind of I expected them to kind of get off to a slower start, just because of what all took place over the off season. Or I mean, you could argue that with, um, you know, like probably 2 or 3 teams here in the WNBA. But yeah, like I said, I to me it was kind of a normal kind of what we expected opening weekend. When it comes to the Lynx specifically, I mean, what they were able to do without two of the three best players or two of their top four players with Kayla McBride and Alana Smith out in the season opener. But then you have Smith back in the second game, and they were clicking. I mean, I know Cheryl had talked about, and we'll dive into this a little bit, but Cheryl had talked about during the training camp that in the preseason that they're already leaps and bounds ahead of where they were last year because they don't have that learning process, which is key. I mean, you could say the same with like New York. They have a bulk of their roster back, or Las Vegas, but I mean it's a lot of these teams that are these teams that are going to get off to a hot start have their core back, and that already puts you ahead of everybody else and gives you an advantage. But yeah, it was a fun opening weekend, that's for sure. I think for Lynx fans that are listening to this podcast, it'll be a fun year, but hopefully we'll see what happens. Not to get too far ahead, but we'll see what happens in the postseason.
Don't put the cart in front of the horse,
yeah,
man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to get your business in front of a passionate and dedicated fan base? Do you want to support the ever-growing landscape of women's sports? Hitting the Hardwood Network is here for you. We offer partnerships and sponsorships at various levels, including advertising on the Hitting the Hardwood and Lynx Happy Hour podcasts, the Hitting the Hardwood newsletter, Patreon page, website, social media, and much more. If you want to partner or sponsor Hitting the Hardwood, please reach out to us at hittingthehardwood@gmail.com, and let's chat about how we can work together to support the ever-growing landscape of women's sports and help the game grow. I want to give a shout out to our current partners here at Hitting the Hardwood and those who help make Hitting the Hardwood happen. Thank you to Pence Homes, Fantasy Sports Evo, Homage, and Better Edge for your continued partnership and your continued support of Hitting the Hardwood and Lynx Happy Hour and your willingness to help make the game grow.
What were your first, and you kind of talked about it a little bit, but what were your first impressions on the Lynx and in what we saw in those first few games of the year?
Yeah, look, I think what we saw, I don't know if anybody else had this feeling throughout last season. It took me a while before I gained the confidence. Uh, Minnesota sports fans, you know what I'm talking about. Like
Oh yes. Oh
The
yes.
Lynx historically will win close games. That was not the case over the past few years.
Hmm.
The Lynx historically are not a Minnesota sports team in the sense of they actually win games, have success, thrive in crunch time. So last season there was this like disconnect for me between me as a Minnesota sports fan growing up and what I know and what is ingrained and what to expect. It's like I know gravity exists.
Hmm.
Um, but then like the Lynx slowly as the season went on, just more confidence, more confidence. And so coming into this year, I guess my general big question was that like a nice little flame that burned, but is that flame out? Right?
Hmm.
Like did that system, did those players gel together for that 1 year and it was beautiful and it was magnificent? But it was a 1 year thing. We see that across the league. I always bring up the Nikki Collin, Atlanta Dream a few years back, who just like ran the gambit, were in second place, had a crazy record. Like we see that every once in a while where a team just gels and they're great,
Hmm.
and then the next year they kind of just fall off, or the luck runs out at some point. I think we saw that maybe in Chicago last year at one point or whatever. And so that was kind of like my big overarching question and what I saw in the first half from Dallas. And I know it wasn't a dominant first half, and it was definitely the second half that set them apart. But that first half showed me that there was that consistency. We were going to see that same team because the way they handled the adversity in the first half, the way they
Hmm.
handled those early season growing pains, really showed me a lot. And then the second half was just like, it's kind of like when you race a toddler. In the beginning of the race, you stay close to them, you let them feel like they're doing a good job, whatever. It's a nice little fun time, and then at a certain point, you're like, okay, I got to win this. Let's go.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened. And I thought it was impressive, obviously, to do it without Kayla McBride. Nafisa Collier has scored 50 some points in her first two
Mhm.
games. It's great. Got to
She
make up
looks
for the fact
outstanding.
she looks outstanding. And like there were, the first, I had some questions coming into the season how 3-on-3 basketball could negatively impact players like Fee,
Mhm.
who might have grown accustomed to the space and the ability of no double teams
Yeah.
and what that can do to you. And now does your internal clock work differently? But obviously, you have camp to get used to that. You've been playing
Hmm.
5-on-5 your whole career, your whole life. She's look amazing. She's mid-season form. Courtney Williams stepping up when she needs to. Still need a little more from Natisha Heidemann.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if you're just gonna make me avoid Diamond Miller and Carly Samuelson because I could go on and on and on about them.
Yeah.
Um, but in general, I think I really like the makeup of this roster. They have the versatility. The addition of Jess Shepard, if she can stay healthy, really adds a lot. I talk about Jess Shepard. Has so she can do the only player that I can compare her to is Alyssa Thomas
Yeah.
in the downhill ability, in the pure muscle, in that
Hmm.
paint destructiveness. And she has two labrums,
Yeah.
so she can shoot the ball.
It's true.
But obviously she can't stay as healthy as an Alyssa Thomas. So there's gives and takes.
Yeah.
Um, so I think this team is poised to do more. But I still, my two big questions, um, lie heavily on Carly Samuelson,
Hmm.
and Diamond Miller. And then if it's not, if we're not like if I'm going on a rant now, but like if I'm talking about my other concerns, my other questions is Bridget Carlton. Remember what we saw last year.
Yeah.
When you're a shooter, when you are being aggressive offensively, when you are getting some points, this team can be so very successful, but you
Hmm.
need to be aggressive offensively. You can no longer be this passive player. You're a great defender, but you need to be involved in the game. I
Hmm.
want the Bridget Carlton who was robbed of the Commissioner Cup MVP award. That's
Hmm.
what I want.
The thing with Bridget is she's the kind of player, she's great. She does a lot of the little things that don't even show up on the stat sheet. And her energy is great. She can, I mean, you can just throw her out there the whole game and she'll play. But when her shot isn't falling, it's almost like she kind of goes away from shooting. If you're a
Hmm.
shooter, what do they always say? If you're struggling, you keep shooting and get yourself out of it. And I'm not saying that she struggled really early on, but when a couple shots aren't falling, it seems like she stops.
Hmm.
And that I think is, I don't know what the reasoning is behind it. It could just be the flow of the game, flow of the offense. Maybe they turn to fee more, whatever it may be. But I would like to see her, not force it, but kind of force it a little bit more when shots aren't falling.
Oh yeah.
Um, but I do agree with that, because when she even has, let's say 6 to 12 points, that helps the team tremendously because they always come in key moments too. And I think that's where also Carly Samuelson will come into play too, is being that kind of second option, as far as hitting, those key shots like a Bridget Carlton would normally hit. Now it would probably be among that second unit. But one of the things that now going back to the layout of this team is deeper. I mean, it is a very deep team, which is something we knew coming into the regular season. I mean, training camp, they probably could have rostered 15 players, that they had
Yeah.
with the team in camp. But they're very deep if they can stay healthy. That's the key thing that you were talking about. I mean, you look at kind of a lot of the players that you mentioned. Carly Samuelson, she struggled to stay healthy throughout her career. Jess Shepard, we all know her struggles with staying healthy. Diamond Miller has struggled to stay healthy the last couple of years. If they're not on the court, they're not helping the team. This team's not deep. So it kind of, if they can stay healthy, and I think Jess Shepard, she's in outstanding shape. Not that she wasn't, but she's in outstanding shape. You can tell she put on some muscle, over the last year overseas. I'm hoping that helps her, and I'm hoping Diamond Miller too. I mean, what if they're both healthy? They're great assets to this team. We saw that over the first two games, but
I'd argue one of those is a greater asset for trade, but
well,
whatever, you know.
that's true. But and that could happen too. I mean, that's it depends where they get into the point of the season, and if they need to make a move, if they need to make a little extra push, they're all in. I mean, they're at the point where they're all in. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see it. I mean, they're not going to add any, I don't think, draft capital for 2026, but just because that pick that they do have, that's the Chicago pick, is just way too good to pass up on or
Oh,
kind of give it
totally.
up.
I
But
I just think you're talking about, we this team is deeper. You add a vet like Miriam Batty,
Yeah.
someone who I like that addition. It's kind of like uh when they added shoot, I'm blanking on her name. I was obsessed with her at the time. Milic. When
Oh
they
yeah,
added
yeah,
Milic,
yeah.
when they added Milic to add that, and that's a classic Reeve move to add a vet big to the team who has experience overseas but hasn't played in the W, kind of get that start. Obviously, Kosu is a player who is young and up and coming, a lot of upside potential, still young though. And the reason you talked about depth being so important with the health with Jess Shepard, Diamond Miller, and Carly Samuelson is because, you know, I last year they had Ceci Zandalicini, and you kind of touched on this in terms of hitting the shots that are important too, and in key moments with Bridget Carlton. That's what Zandy was so good at.
Yeah.
Um, and her ability, if I'm being blunt, like I just don't have a lot of faith in Carly Samuelson. I've seen her bounce around the league and not, and I'm sorry, something I get irked by like random ridiculous things, but something that irked me is this whole like she finally got a foothold on a spot in the league. And I'm like, no, she didn't. Like she played for a bad team that had like a ton of open spots, and she secured a spot on a bad team that wasn't trying to win at the time. That's not a sign for me that I want to go out and get that player. I understand she can be a knockdown shooter. My issue and my concern is her handles. I stop trying to do that behind the back crossover thing because you keep turning it over. I just don't see the. I understand there is not a lot of available talent for you to get. It was a big give to give a first round pick to get her. Even if Kosu was the player that you wanted and you were able to get her later in the draft, that's still a big give to get her. And so I think if she's a player who's coming in, who's just gonna bring energy, stand around the 3-point line and hit some spot up threes every once in a while, cool, great. But if we're asking for more, if we're asking her to fill that Zandy role from last year, we're in trouble.
Yeah, I do think it we'll see, and I maybe could be totally wrong with this prediction, but I think we'll see a little bit of a different output from her when she does move to the second unit. I think she's just, I mean, it's, once we get Kale McBride back into the starting lineup, and then kind of transition Carly back to the bench, I think her in spurts will be great. And not that she's, been bad by any means to begin. It's just they're missing something at that spot in the starting lineup yet. You can definitely tell that, and K-Mac helps his team defensively as well. So I mean, I think that that second unit of Jess Shepard, Carly Samuelson, you put in Natisha Heidemann, Diamond Miller, and then you kind of fill in that fifth spot basically. Maybe it's with a starter, maybe it's with their odds are they're not going to be playing five players from the bench at one time, but um, it that's a very talented group right there in itself, and you're not even talking about the starting lineup, but
It's
health
a fast lineup. That's
it
definitely
is.
like when I see that when I hear that lineup, what I think is I imagine like a GIF of or a GIF, whatever it's supposed to, I don't even
I don't even know what it's
of
called.
at this point of Diamond Miller just sprinting full speed past the defender to the basket and then moving way too fast and missing it. Like I think that lineup has so much speed,
Right.
but do they have the control? And that's where my concern starts to come in because like Natisha Heidemann, Diamond Miller, and Carly Samuelson. They're all players that I think have a lot of upside when they're on, when they're heating up,
Mhm.
can be an offensive spark plug, uh, really, really positive addition. But also at the same time, I think can be very, very streaky.
Yeah.
I Yeah, I mean, I could go on forever. I have a lot of concerns about that. I think most importantly, and kind of almost bluntly, like I think this team can be if we see a lot of minutes from Diamond Miller and Carly Samuelson, I think it should be because they are extending leads and we need to get other players in like Peely also to get some run
Right.
versus putting them in at key moments that we need that depth. That's just my take right now. I think we have other depth and variety of lineups that you can do.
Yeah. I do think too that who we see coming off the bench will largely depend on matchups. I know Cheryl's
Mm,
been this kind of person or coach for years that she plays. Her rotations are based on the team they're playing, which is great. I
hmm
mean, that's what you're supposed to be doing. But a lot of teams will just play their set lineup, and you either beat them or they get beat. They kind of live or die by that. But we could see Sapili play 10 minutes one game and Diamond Miller not play at all. And, just and vice versa. Like it's a lot of people read into how many minutes these bench players are getting or the second unit players are getting, but you also got to take into account who they're playing. And it's not that Cheryl has anything against Kosu because she hasn't played yet this year, or Peely because she hasn't played really any minutes this year. But it's just a matter of who they're playing at the same time. And
Well,
it's
this roster is super versatile. And I
right.
think that's the cool part of this depth. Like I'm not big on Carly or Diamond, like if I haven't made that clear.
Mhm.
But the versatility of this, right? Like the aspect that Diamond Miller brings to this team the reason why I'm not, pulling the Rachel Banham, why the hell is she on this roster style,
Mhm.
is because of that breakaway speed,
Yeah.
because of that cut to the basket athleticism. Now, thinks she needs to work on finishing.
Mhm.
Thinks there's a lot of things to change to get better at.
Right.
But that cut to the basket, that speed. So you have that. Then you got a Peely, who I think is such a unique Swiss Army knife player that can be used in such. This roster truly can adapt to whoever they're going up against
Mhm.
in any way, shape, or form. Like they replace a Maisha Hines Allen type player with a Jess Shepard,
Right.
who I think is a upgrade.
Mhm.
Um, Not the same physically imposing person in the same way, but still a physically imposing person who
Right.
has a more versatile offensive bag, and a little bit more control. So I think they truly can, like you were saying, adjust to whatever they need that given night to take on that opponent.
Right. And the times that will come into play, I mean, the key moments in the season will be when there are injuries. If a Jess Shepard goes down, if a Diamond Miller goes down, if Elena Smith goes down, like we saw without her in the first game of the year, that'll be very key because obviously you have to have some players step up. And Minnesota has that. I mean, this is probably one of the first rosters that I would be confident with 1 through 12, even like moving into the starting lineup, as far as just being able to provide key moments or key minutes here and there. Or maybe I'd say maybe 1 through 10 actually, um, but to the point is like they have players that'll be able to step up, and it's just an incredibly deep and versatile roster at the same time, so they can adapt to really anything, which is so key throughout the course of the year. Not even talking about the postseason, that's even another step, but during the year, it's just that's incredibly valuable.
Oh yeah, I mean they are going to benefit from it in the postseason
Hmm.
because of the rest they're able to give their stars and their key players throughout the season.
Right.
Um, a lot of teams are going to be running, you know, just running their five into the ground
Hmm.
because they don't have the depth, because they have injuries. They're going to be going in hardships. That's not what this team is. Um, this team is going to be really, really interesting. I still have questions in terms of the offensive output. Like let's be completely clear. Last year their defense was impeccable.
Hmm.
Their offense was really good. At times had some streakiness towards the end of the season where they kind of sputtered out a little bit, got a little concerning. And that's where I think the question mark of, excuse me, how can we add more offensive firepower? And I think, you know, at the time it was you need to add more 3-point shooting. You need more 3-point shooting because Natisha Heidemann wasn't hitting them
Right.
like we'd like to see her.
Hmm.
Because there wasn't really more depth in terms of 3-point shooting on this roster. Yes, you've added a Carly Samuelson. Diamond Miller, while I don't think is a great 3-point shooter, I think if she gets an open look, she's going to hit them at a nice clip. Um, Peely can hit it if needed. And so this roster, I think what we saw from Reeve going into it is we're not going to find that end all be all solution
Mhm.
that's going to come off the bench, be an Alicia Clark, right? A really good defender and just a knockdown 3-point shooter. But what we can do is add more offensive output in other ways by adding Jess Shepard, who's not going to be lighting it up from three, but is going to get us more points in the paint, more rebounds, good defending, taking away from the other team. So I think what's the phrase? There's many ways to skin a cat,
Yep, yep.
which I
Multiple
guess
ways to skin
probably
it.
isn't the right phrase to do when we're
Yeah.
talking about the Lynx. But
That's a good point.
but you get what I'm saying here.
Yeah.
Like I think a creative way that Minnesota went about this, and you can't doubt Cheryl Reeve because what we've seen, right?
Hmm.
Like she is the best coach in WNBA history. I used to say one of the best. I don't think there's that question anymore. It's gotten to the point where like you look around the league, you look at Seattle and you go, if Cheryl Reeve was coaching Seattle, that team would look like a championship contender.
Right.
If Cheryl Reeve was coaching a healthy LA team, and I'm not, that's not like, it was a little shade to Noel Quinn. That's not shade to LA. But like, there's so many rosters around this league that you see the roster and you go, wow, they should be good, and they're not as good. And
Hmm.
that's not, like LA's in its own rebirth, regrowth, whatever.
Right.
But yeah, I just think that Cheryl Reeve raises a team in a way that if I'm doubtful of a Carly or a Diamond Miller, which I've been ranting about this whole episode, then then Cheryl Reeve can lift them to be better and find
Hmm.
ways to put them into game situations to be better.
Right.
Um, and I think this team is very. I'm. When do they play New York when's the first time they play New York? I gotta look
That's
this up. Let me
that's a good
see.
question. I'll have
How?
to
Oh
I'll
my
have to
God! Wait a second. This can't be. They don't play New York until July 30th.
I think you're right. Yeah.
That is ins What are we doing here?
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I'm all for it. On one hand, I fight with myself. On the one hand, I'm all for it because let the teams build up and have ridiculously good records before they go at it with each other.
Right.
Fine, like build up to it. But on the other hand, like
We want to see them. We
they
got
went to they went to overtime of game five on the
right.
word. Like, what are we doing here?
You think
What are
they're a
we
part of
doing?
opening weekend, not I mean, I don't know.
I personally am anti that only because I think, and maybe I have to adjust it now that we have like preseason prioritization, but for so long, I felt like that rematch was watered down in opening weekend because
Mhm.
of like the first game jitters.
Right.
Obviously, when you were talking about the Lynx Sparks, it was a little bit different because you
Mhm.
had these vets who like it didn't matter if they hadn't played for 50 years. You know what I mean? Like they
Right.
were going to perform at the top. But um I would have liked to see it the opening week, like
Right.
this week, right?
Yeah.
Get a game or two under your belt so that we are getting the best product. But
Mhm.
that is wild.
Yeah. That I didn't realize that until you just said it.
Okay, not only that, so they play them Wednesday, July 30th, Mitchell. Then August, then not then August, okay? August 10th, 16th, and 19th. They play each other, at least on the Lynx side,
Yeah.
3 games in a row. Are we
W
just like
WNBA schedules, man.
Is it are we just having like a mid-season playoff match, like a series? Like, what is this? This is baseball? What are we doing here?
Uh, when you talk about the real quick to end things
Yeah.
up here, when you think about the Lynx, do you think that what's your prediction for them, I guess? Do you think they'll make back to the finals, be favorites to win it next year? What do you think?
That's so tough because I feel like whatever I say is gonna jinx. No, like, I think I fully like going into this year. I'm very hard on a lot of teams because I don't think a lot of teams can win it all. I truly think that unless like crazy injuries or something wild happens, we are talking about New York and Minnesota back in the finals battling it. Vegas has an opportunity. Indiana has an opportunity to play spoiler for one of those teams. But I definitely think like all the cards line up, right? Like it, and I was saying this earlier, like Fee not winning Unrivaled. only adds fuel to it. That's better for her in this. She
Mhm.
wants a championship. This team wants a championship. The drive, they seem so focused. I truly think we're going to see a repeat New York, LA, New York, Minnesota in the finals. And heck, it could go down to 7 now.
Let's go. I like it. I like it. Let's hope it goes to 7 games and we have maybe not we will maybe save the excitement of like what would happen last year. Let's just maybe make it like a comfortable win, no controversy, no nothing at the end of the 7 games or whatever, however long it goes. But
Whoever wins it, we don't
right,
need. I
right.
just want it. Like, I don't want the commissioner wearing a Minnesota Skyline dress, or an Indiana sky, whatever it is.
Yep.
I just want. I love the excitement. I love the last second plays. I love it being decided with 5 seconds left or whatever. But let's have it be player decided, not
Yeah,
ref decided.
yeah, absolutely. No, and so you were talking about the how Minnesota would probably use it as fuel. I know I wrote about this in my season preview too, of they they've been there, unfortunately for them, but they've been in this situation where they had 2016, and then turned it into a championship in 2017. Who are two of the members on part of that team that are on this team? Currently, it's Lindsey Whalen and Rebecca Brunson and Cheryl Reeve, of course. With them being on the coaching staff. So it's something that will be a teaching lesson all season long. It'll be in the back of their minds, and I know they're not talking about it, but it'll still be in the back of their minds. They'll still be thinking about it. They'll still be using it as fuel. So we'll see if we have the same ending. We are in an odd year, so that comes into play as well. It's all coming together. So we'll see what happens. Uh, well, Aryeh, I appreciate you joining. As you mentioned at the beginning, everybody should go check out Winsidr, winsidr.com. Check out everything on socials. Really anywhere that you find anything, you will find Winsidr. Patreon, check out the podcast, go to Bleacher Report, everything in between. So thank you for joining, and we'll talk again soon.
Talk again soon. Hey, go Lynx.
Thank you once again to Aryeh for joining the podcast this week. As I mentioned, it's fun talking basketball with him. Every time I sit down and talk to him and have him on the podcast, I think I could talk to him for about an hour and a half. But him and we could talk all day. But it's fun to talk not only the WNBA but specifically the Lynx with Aryeh. He's been around the game for a while. And like I said, it's been great to work alongside him at Winsidr. With that said, I want to jump into thanking our sponsors. Without our sponsors, Hitting the Hardwood does not happen. If you or someone you know is interested in partnering with Hitting the Hardwood, we offer partnerships and sponsorships on various levels, including advertising, not only on this podcast, but the Lynx Happy Hour podcast hosted by Terry Horseman, the Hitting the Hardwood newsletter on social media, our website, and more. If you can go check out our website. You can check out the website and go to the partners tab. You can find out where our partners are, and you can find the sponsorship levels. Or you can send us an email at hittingthehardwood@gmail.com. Happy to partner, happy to chat. If you don't see something on there on our sponsorship levels that meets your needs or that you're not comfortable with, feel free to reach out. We can chat. Let's have a conversation, and we'll move forward from there. But our partners that we do have here at Hitting the Hardwood, they have been, most of them have been partnering since day one. But they thankfully have agreed to partner with us here at the Hitting the Hardwood Network, which includes the Hitting the Hardwood podcast as well as the Lynx Happy Hour podcast. We'll start with Pence Homes. If you need to go to Pence Homes, if you're looking for a home, buying or selling, Nate and the team, they should be your top choice. And they are a proud supporter of women's athletics, women's basketball, as well as the Hitting the Hardwood Network. So thank you, Nate, and the team at Pence Homes. I also want to give a shout out to Fantasy Sports Evo, Better Edge, and Homage. Fantasy Sports Evo and Better Edge are two betting platforms. Better Edge is a Minneapolis-based company. You can go to BettorEdge, BETTOR Edge.com. But that is one of my Fantasy Sports Evo and Better Edge are both two of my favorite betting platforms that I use. Better Edge is those guys have been phenomenal over there towards me and Hitting the Hardwood since day one. as well as Fantasy Sports Evo. At Fantasy Sports Evo, it's a little bit of a different way that you can bet on sports. It's you bet on teams rather than betting on individual players. So it's a very unique way to bet on sports, and it's fun. It's a very, like I said, very different. But Homage, you guys have known since day one. Homage is a vintage clothing store that sells WNBA gear, any other gear of any sport that you would like. So you can check out Homage, HOMAGE.com. Also, I want to give a plug to our Patreon page, patreon.com/hitting the hardwood. There's where you will directly support Hitting the Hardwood. And not only with you, I mean, you can support our partners, and in return, that will end up supporting Hitting the Hardwood. But you also can support us directly and support our work. And you can also get exclusive content. You get podcasts before anybody else. So please check out patreon.com/hitting the hardwood. And we have some small, just for a small amount each month, you can support the longevity of not only Hitting the Hardwood, but the Lynx Happy Hour, as I mentioned, podcast with Terry Horseman. And you just benefit the Hitting the Hardwood network as a whole. So with that said, I'll stop jabbering, and I'll just say I hope you enjoy the regular season. I really appreciate you guys listening, as you do every episode that I drop. Please like, subscribe, share this podcast. Let's spread it around, especially as the WNBA season starts. But I appreciate you all listening, and I hope you enjoy the start of the regular season. And we'll dive into the regular season as it continues. But I hope you enjoy this WNBA season. And let's get this thing going. Like I said, it's year 10 for me, and I'm stoked to be able to bring this podcast to you again, as well as be able to do my written content as I have in the past. And you can follow me on social media, obviously. So with that said, I appreciate you listening. Enjoy the regular season. Enjoy the basketball. We're back, and I will talk to you guys soon.
3, 2,